What's going on out there, everybody? This is your boy, comedian Marlon Ballard, and I am joined by two legends in the game, man. My man David Frank and Michael Murphy. They collectively make the group The System, man. They are legends in the game. Give it up for them. Give it up. Woo! Yeah.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
How are you?
Great. How you guys doing, man?
Good, Marlon.
Doing good.
Yeah, that's great, man. I want to just show my appreciation to you guys of what y'all have done for the music industry since the early '80s, man. When competition was heavy, y'all was pumping out them hits still, and you still stood out from everybody. So I want to thank y'all for all that, man.
All right, great.
Thanks, Marlon.
And so y'all have been friends for a long time. So man, I know y'all met in New York and everything. So how did this start?
Dave, I'm gonna let you get it.
Okay. Let me see if I could put a spin on it. So let's see. It started back in New York. I was playing in a lot of bands, including like Madonna's band, a whole bunch of bands, but they were obscure, we were playing in clubs and stuff. So, and Mike was working with another band called Clear, and they were looking for a keyboard player. And I guess the manager of Clear and Mike were friends, and they came into a club, and I was playing with this other band, and Mike evidently noticed me more than the other band, because the manager was looking for other bands to manage, but he noticed me, and I started playing with Clear, and one thing led to another, and I heard Mike singing. He asked me to come and use my drum machine that I had at the time, a DMX, Oberheim DMX drum machine, very famous early drum machine, voodoo, and he asked me to come and do a session with these two Italian guys. And the two Italian guys they owned a studio, and they started fighting in Italian. And I couldn't understand anything. We couldn't understand what they were saying. And I didn't know Mike very well. And I thought that he just got nervous and started singing just to distract from them fighting in the other room. I noticed his voice, and I was like, wow, this guy is great. So that was the first time that I heard Mike sing. I'll let him go on from there.
Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, exactly what he said. I was with Dennis King, who was mastering engineer at Atlantic. He was kind of my mentor. And I had been in bands since I was 13, 14 years old. And it got to a point where we were doing all clubs and over and get a record deal. So I was wondering, maybe I don't know enough about the business. So I started working for this company, this guy, Fred Petrus, who had this group called Change. I don't know if you remember them, Luther Vandross. So he came to the United States, and he wanted my band to pretend we were one of the bands on his label, because he would record all these albums in Italy, and they weren't really bands, or more or less studio musicians. So through that meeting, he asked me if I wanted to help, if I wanted to work for his company, which was a publishing company and management company. So it was through all of that I initially met David, because one of the sessions we were working on, one of the records we were working on, David was called in to play keyboards as a sub for Kashif. So I came to the studio, and I didn't recognize him as someone I would be eventually making a group with. I didn't even recognize the kind of music he would make. So one day he called me up. This is after he was playing with Clear and we were on tour and everything. He called me up and said, hey, I have this track I've been working on. I was going to do it with Madonna, but Madonna backed out. Could you come to my studio and listen to it? And at the time, I had no idea what the music would be like. But I was like, oh, okay, I'll go, because I knew he was a good keyboard player. And I was really kind of expecting something in the lines of Steely Dan, kind of chordy, jazzy, heady. Yeah. When I got there, he hit play on this track. And it was the track I had been waiting to hear for the past 5-6 years, since I had dreamed of this concept of, if a group called like Kraftwerk and some of the electronic music that was coming out of the UK, if they combined with a singer like Rick James, what would it sound like? And when he played this track, I saw the future. I knew it was the one. And I really didn't have any idea about the lyrics or any, but I just kind of on the spot, actually a little nervous, just came up with a hook. And David said, oh, great. So go home, write the lyrics, and we'll meet tomorrow morning and go in the studio. And I'm thinking to myself, write the lyrics. Write the lyrics overnight. Okay. But I had a concept and I just took that concept and just moved it forward. So the next morning at about 8 o'clock, he drove his Volkswagen Squareback. I was still living with my mom in South Jamaica, Queens. I gave him the address. How did you find it, David?
I don't remember. I have no idea. We didn't have Google Maps. I mean, you know.
So he comes out, picks me up. We go to the studio in Long Island. We record the track the whole day. I sing the vocal, the backgrounds, we arrange it, we mix it. We finish about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So he drops me off at my house. By that time, it's about 5. The sun's coming up. So I go in the basement and I had a cassette demo. I put it in my stereo system, which I had a monstrous stereo in my mother's basement. And when I heard what came back through the speakers, I was like, this is it. This is exactly the song, the track I've been waiting for. So Dave, you can pick it up from there.
Okay, so I went home. I stopped at the music building which was on 38th Street near the Port Authority bus terminal in Boston, in New York. And Madonna was sleeping in the hallway. She was she didn't have any place to live. She was like sleeping in the hall, and I played the track for her. And she was banging her fist on the ground going, I can't believe I didn't do this. You guys are going to get a record deal, and I could have gotten a record deal, and I didn't. And anyway, I was thinking, we're going to get a record deal. You know, anyway, I went home and I played it for my girlfriend, and the phone rang, and Mike called me and he said, Dave, we have a record deal. So we literally, in 2 days, like I had worked on the track for a long time. Mike wrote the lyrics. We went to the studio, recorded everything in 1 day and mixed it all night, staying up all night. And the next morning, we got a record deal. Mike had gone to Atlantic Records and talked to a couple people that he knew there. And you could tell this.
Yeah, no. So during the time I was like kind of road managing, trying to learn the business, I had made friends with a couple people because of my, my workaholic attitude. And they said, hey, if you ever have anything you want to come play, just come play it for me. And there were 2 people in particular. Jim Delahan, who recently passed away at Atlantic, was one of those people. So I called him. I said, Jim, I have something I'd love for you to hear. He called me. He said, come on up to Atlantic and play it for me. So I went into the office at the Rock, which was, for me, once again, being in, finally from all this time being in bands and trying to make it and trying to get through the door, here I was sitting in the golden office of Atlantic Records. So I play about a minute of it. He says, hold on 1 second, I'll be right back. He walks through a door, comes back and brings in Jerry Greenberg, who I recognize because he was the youngest president of Atlantic Records at the time. So he comes in, how you doing? Turns around, sits down with his back facing me, and he puts the track on. He listens to about a minute, and he turns around with a big grin on his face and said, you got yourself a record deal. We didn't talk about any details. I don't even think I knew. Oh, I did know a lawyer because I knew the lawyer that was Clear's lawyer,
right?
Who ended up being our lawyer. And he said, you got a deal. I went downstairs to the street into a phone booth. You remember those, right? Phone booths.
No, he doesn't remember.
Dave
Marlon doesn't remember that.
Yeah, you don't remember that. No,
they just got rid of him.
They just got rid of him. Right?
They just got rid of him. So I remember I used to steal the change out the little.
But the change is the thing.
So I said, Dave, we got a record deal. We got to come up with a name. I mean, we didn't even have a name.
We didn't have a name.
So that's
beginning. Well, okay, so the song actually, it's Passion. It's called This Passion. It's the 3rd song on our first album. And it was on the radio within 3.5 weeks. It was just on the radio, and it became a hit in New York and LA and many other cities. An urban and dance hit. So we had a quick transition.
Mm-hmm.
So what came up? Like, how did you come up with the name The System?
Well, for me, I thought about how we represented the both sides of the system, 2 sides of a coin. And it was actually in reverse because David, I mean, I grew up playing in bands playing funk music, but you know how it is when you're doing something around it a lot, you're always trying to seek something different. So my focus had kind of gone to electronic music and rock, where David was he was listening to funk, and he had been like studying funk records and funk bass lines and all of that. So it kind of came in reverse. I was kind of approaching the melodies from a rock perspective, and he was approaching it from a funk perspective. So I thought together we represent the system. We're both sides. We represent both sides, but probably in the opposite direction. And also at the time, music and stereos were called systems. So the sound system,
stereo system.
you had I don't know if you had one of those in your house, but it was like it had a phonograph, a cassette player, everything in one, and it was called a system. So that's kind of where the name came from.
Right. Oh man, legendary. And y'all pretty much ran through the 80s. Y'all had Sweat, Experiment, Pleasure Seekers, Don't Disturb This Groove, and Rhythm and Romance. Like, how did each of these albums stand out from each other? Did you go into each album with a different mindset? Like, okay, I'm gonna do this different from the first one, or I'm gonna just keep it the same and we're just gonna flow. How did you do that? I'm gonna start with Dave.
Yeah. Okay, we were actually part of really what was happening simultaneously while we were making music was that the electronic music was really just developing. So there was Kraftwerk before, but Kraftwerk actually was more of like a triggered kind of in other words, you programmed everything. I guess they must have played stuff too.
Sequences, yeah.
With sequencers, but I didn't really like to use step sequencers. Step sequencers sound very mechanical and very predictable to me. I sort of waited for something to come out called a DSX, which you could actually play the parts in. You could play a part and it had like, a metronome, and you'd play it and it would play back your part. And then you could program other parts in at the same time. But it's still different than a tape recorder because you can kind of sit there by yourself and do it. And you don't need an engineer or anything like that. So I waited around for that. And so that our first album was actually done with instruments called the DMX drum machine, a DSX sequencer, an Oberheim keyboard, which is right here, actually. There's one right here, and a Mini Moog, which is right up there. And that's really pretty much what our first album was done with. I think I had one more keyboard, a Memory Moog. But then after that, the electronic music there started to be a lot of other instruments. And the vocabulary of electronic music started to increase with the instruments. There was a new instrument called the PPG Wave. There were, what were some of the other ones? There were some of the real Synclavier, all these different things came out. But we basically used, I got a PPG Wave, and basically we were so the second album had more instruments and more variety. And if you listen to Sweat, you'll hear how it's like Sweat is primarily 2 4-note parts, a bass line, and drums and vocals. And that's what it is on a 24-track tape, 24 tracks. That's what we had to work with. The next album, we started to increase it, and we had more. I had like the PPG Wave and that sequencer going at the same time as the other one and programming it. And it became more and more elaborately technically. And to some extent, I think that musically, it all to some extent was revealed really on our first album. And if you listen to some of the other songs on our first album, Stand Up and Cheer, for instance, which is a really weird song. Like I realized, not a weird song lyrically, Mike, I don't mean that. I realized that actually a lot of the whole progression of the whole chord progression in the verse is from Chopin. There's this Chopin waltz that has the same progression, but I was brought up with, playing classical music and jazz and all sorts of styles. And I was kind of like, oh, what the heck? I could do whatever I want here. I was just sitting there by myself. And Mike just, made it all sound great by actually turning it into songs. Which is great. So, thank you. Thank you very much, by the way.
I love that.
But so it was kind of, the first album did sort of have the framework for almost really everything else, but technically it advanced on each album to more and more instruments and you know, and then it kind of changed, of course. You know, Don't Disturb This Groove is more of a, you know, a soul, funk, electronic groove, a little bit different, that we really didn't have anything like that until our second album. There's a song called Lollipops and Everything, which was sort of the precursor to Don't Disturb This Groove. And then we've tried, you know, then we've made
Promises Can Break. Promises Can Break also.
Promises Can Break also, yeah. So, I mean, we experimented on Experiment, like Promises Can Break. We actually had an acoustic piano on there, which was like a, you know, it was kind of like, should we actually do something with an acoustic piano? But anyway, so
it was there.
it was there. We used it. Yep. I mean, you change, you know, you can listen to the albums and you'll hear how they progress. Yep. By the time we got to Rhythm and Romance, New Jack Swing was happening, and we were kind of going, well, we could do that too. We're gonna do that. Yeah, we didn't exactly do it exactly right, but it's actually cool. You know, it's cool.
Yes. So pretty much like you mentioned Don't Disturb This Groove, which is one of the greatest songs of all time, like by my standards and by everybody in the music industry. Like they praise that song. They play it in Atlanta all the time. Like I get in the car, I bet it's on the radio right now. Like how do you do you realize what you had on your hands with that song?
Well, you know what? This is how that song came about. David, you know, when we write, there's always a demo. Like we've never, I don't think, Dave, I don't remember ever going to the studio to record without having some framework.
We wrote the song before we go in the studio.
Right. So that was the track he sent me. And on the track, it just said groove. That's all it said. And when I heard the rhythm, I was like, wow, it was like one of the first beat ballads, because it was really a ballad, but it had a hard snare and hard kick. You know, we kind of owe that to Tom Lord-Alge, who mixed that album. But it had the chords of like an Earth, Wind, and Fire song. Yeah. And when it goes from the verse to the chorus, it just opens up kind of in the way that You're in My System did. The way it has those really beautiful chords in the chorus. Don't Disturb the Groove. This groove had something similar to that. But it only took me maybe one evening to come up with the title. And I knew the title was original. And then we worked on it for a little while and we were able to come up with that little 2-bar section before it goes to the chorus, to hang the sign upon the door. We didn't have that. It was going from the verse straight to the chorus. And I think we spent a little time right at your apartment.
We did. Yeah, you came over.
Yeah. And we played with that. And when we got that, we knew we had something special. And, you know, it's funny that, like I said, we do a demo of everything. Now, sometimes the demo has something over the recording sometimes. But that was one song that as it developed in the studio, we could just tell it was great. So I got to tell you a funny story. When we didn't have a record company breathing down our necks when we made records because we had our own thing. Nobody really knew how we were making records. So that we would go in, we would do the songs we liked, arrange them, and then we would go in and basically have like a listening party, you know, like with the executives. So we went in with that album, Don't Disturb This Groove, and we were playing all the songs. And we saved Don't Disturb This Groove for last, right, Dave?
Right.
We saved that for last, knowing that wait till I hear this, wait till I get a load of this one. So we played it, and it was like stone silence in the room because that was the last song, and they didn't like it. They were like, "Well, do you have something else, baby?"
They said, "You've got to give me something better than that."
Got to give me something else, something uptown. I need something to take to radio. But one of the A&R guys there said, "Hold on. Let's listen to that again. I think there's something to that." And it was Merlin Bob, one of the
Bob, yeah.
Said, "I think there's something to it." And you know what? We put that song out. David and I were definitely positive that was a single. Yeah. Within a couple of weeks of it being released, we started getting heavy rotation on this station in Washington State. And I remember our label president calling and saying, "You know, I think you guys got something. I mean, I'm not sure how big it's going to be, but it looks like you got one." And sure enough, it ended up being a big one for us.
Man, so y'all were on fire around that time. That was 87, wasn't it? was
That
87?
was 87, yeah.
86, 87, right? 86?
86, 87.
It was
So
87.
Oh,
around
87,
that time,
okay.
like Mike had just dropped Bad, Prince was on fire, like y'all, like, and then y'all
Yep.
stood out
Yep.
and y'all have this hit that was just tearing the charts up. And then you
Yeah.
dropped Rhythm and Romance after that, and then after that, y'all took a hiatus. Why did you decide to take a hiatus at the height of your, you know?
It was kind of decided for us. I mean, you know, record companies have expectations that you're going to keep climbing and keep climbing and keep climbing, make bigger and better records, which you can, but it's very hard. It's very hard to read the temperature of the music business. Now, sometimes you're going to come out with something that's different than the expectations that they had for you. And on that album, we went a little bit New Jack Swing, but I still think in retrospect, we had some big records on there. And it comes down to record presidents change, and, you know, they're looking for something maybe a little bit more instant. And, you know, things happen. And we had been going pretty hard and strong for about 8-9 years, like 20,
Right.
you know, 16-hour days, 7 days a week, 5 days a week. And, you know, it was that time.
It was that time. On Rhythm and Romance, there's a song called, there's a number of really great songs, but there's Have Mercy is a really great song that you should listen to if you're not familiar with it. And Soul to Soul also. And Soul to Soul, it's funny because Soul to Soul, remember, so there's a band called Soul to Soul.
Yes.
So there was no band named Soul to Soul yet. So when we played that for the record company, I remember the record company saying, we don't talk about soul music. We call it black music now. I remember them saying that, you know, and I was like, and then a few months later, when you know it, on our record company, the group Soul to Soul came out. Not to take anything away from them.
Yeah, sure.
So it's pretty much in the 90s happened. Dave, not Dave, Mike, you dropped a solo album in that 1991. And then
91, 92, yeah.
Then Dave, you went on and kept producing and co-writing hits. So did y'all ever think y'all would, you know, get back together in the future? Did y'all see that coming, or you was like, you know what, we're just gonna do our separate thing, and then we know when the stars align and the time is right, we'll come back?
We just honestly, we actually never really took as long of a hiatus as you might think. I mean, it might seem like that, but basically, Mike did his solo album, and a couple of years later, or, you know, maybe a year and a half later, Mike came out to LA. I moved out to LA because I started working. I was working on a movie on stuff with Prince. He wanted me to work on this movie. So I came out here and I was working on that. And I moved my family, my kids and my wife, we all moved out here. Well, Mike came out like probably a year, like in 1993. And we did most of, there's an album called Unreleased Unleashed that's out that we put out ourselves actually a few years ago, like maybe 10 years ago. And most of the stuff on that album was done in 1993, early 1994. And it's really actually a fantastic album. As a matter of fact, I was listening to it yesterday, and it's our album. So I was just writing to Mike, I love Grip. I love these songs. Anyway, so you should check it out. It's the one with us. It's like uses an album cover that we didn't use from a failed album cover.
Call of the Wild. Remember?
It was going to be Call of the Wild, and this German photographer was like, I have an idea. We're going to use dogs, and they're going to be in snow. You're going to be, and so that if you look at the album cover of Unreleased Unleashed, we're just looking sad because they're blowing plastic snow in our eyes, and the dogs are freaking sedated and asleep at our feet. It's like a funny album cover. In any case, most of the music was done during that time. And really, actually, 2 or 3 years after that, we did another album for Avex called ESP. Electronic Soul Pioneers.
That's the album cover you talk about?
That's right. Yeah, that's the one, right?
Yeah. Y'all do look kind of depressed. Y'all kind of look.
That was it's Unreleased Unleashed, dog, a little dog reference there. Anyway, so we did ESP.
The curl.
Yeah. So my point is, and then of course, like couple years after that, well, that wasn't released right away, But then it was, and then we did take a few years off, but then we did System Overload.
Yep.
Okay, Mike, you jump in here.
Yeah. No, that's great. You're right on point.
Oh, great, man. And Dave, I compare your synthesizers to another great pianist to me. Have you heard of Devontae Swing from the group Jodeci?
Absolutely.
And he heavily uses that thing, and I'm like, yo, like, and then I hear your music, I'm like, okay, I see where he is influenced from. Like, he definitely used those synths on his music, all 3 albums, and I love it all. So that made me go back and listen to your music and synths.
Yeah.
So I love
that's great. I love Jodeci.
Music artists, sample, because that makes me go back and listen to who was the godfather of it, and then they call you the father of electric R&B.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you. I'll take that if that's whatever. I still like doing it. I still, I love it. I love it. Mike and I are working on our new album.
Yes.
So, and we're having a great time.
So what are we going to expect from this new album? Are y'all going to keep it classic, or are you going to try some new things?
We're always trying new things, and I think we have some groundbreaking stuff, but we've also gone back to some of the traditional sounds we had back in the early 80s. So actually it's called time stretching. And that's kind of the concept, is that we're taking the things we started in the 80s and stretching it across time and incorporating, what we hear in modern music and what we're doing in modern music to make a new album.
Oh man, that's great. And what made y'all decide, now let's do this now? What made you want to do that now?
Well, we actually didn't decide to do it right now. We've been working on it for a couple years.
Yeah.
So,
gotcha.
And we're always kind of like, it's like it's been a never ending thing, it's kind of keeps going, and we're not thinking of it. It's not like there's not that much thought put into it, except for like, here's a track. Do you have any ideas for a song? It's just kind of like that.
It kind of builds from there. It's 1 or 2 songs, and it's 3 songs, and it's, we just have this natural synergy where we get in the room. And prior to the pandemic, Dave would come to New York, I would go to LA, we spend a couple of days at a time, kind of working on tracks and working on ideas. And eventually it snowballed into, a complete project.
Got you. Oh man. And I appreciate y'all, definitely for speaking to me. So pretty much, of course, Mike, you got, I see all your guitars in the back. I see like you still, be hitting the mic, and then Dave, you got all your pianos in the back. So I know y'all are still heavy at work and everything. So like as far as the production, while y'all were, on the hiatus, Dave, you co-wrote Genie in a Bottle for Christina Aguilera.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Biggie, you played the keys on Juicy.
That's right. Actually, Mike is on that too, because that's from Juicy Fruit. Juicy is from Juicy Fruit.
Yeah, Mtume.
That's an Mtume, and Mike played guitar, and I arranged, and
it's funny about that, because he was a very early supporter, because I think he heard In Times of Passion.
Yeah, that's right.
He told us he was driving to Jersey, and he heard it come on the radio, and he had to pull his car over to listen to it. And it was right during that time that we did that session, right, Dave? It was
That's right. That's right.
Right after our
that's the thing with the pulling the car over. It seems like we actually have made a lot of people, because who's the bass player? The guy on Instagram who said the same thing in his interview. The bass, the bass player.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I can't remember.
What's his name?
Gold.
His name is escaping.
I can't think of his name right now.
But anyway, it's on our Instagram page.
Okay, I'll check that out, definitely.
But it's on his too. He's like the most famous bass player right now, kind of from at least social media wise. I've forgotten his name though. Darn.
It's all right. I'll look it up.
Check it out.
Y'all have a great memory.
Well, anyway, he's talking about You're in My System, and he said when he first heard You're in My System, he pulled the car over. So I'm just saying.
Because I think Big Boy sampled that for Shutterbug.
Yes, absolutely.
Got you.
Right, that's right.
See, y'all's memory has been amazing. So this is the first name you forgot, Dave. So
I
you're
forgot
doing
that.
great.
I forgot his name. That's terrible. That's a terrible thing. I'm
It's-
trying to look it up right now, like discreetly from this other screen over here. It's not working out that
I
well.
see you keep glancing over, and I see Mike typing right now too.
Yeah, I'm trying to find, what the heck is his name?
You can't hide, Mike. I can see it in your glasses.
Mike,
Oh,
you know
no,
it.
trying to figure it out.
Okay, so
Oh man, it's all good. So pretty much, man, y'all have spanned, 3, maybe 4 decades. So, when y'all first came out, you had, record stores, people were lining up to go get your album. Now we can stream from our phone. So is it
that's right.
how is that, how's the streaming? Are y'all learning the streaming business now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like it's really going back to school, to be honest.
Yep.
And we take it serious because we really believe in our music and we want to reach new fans. And, we have a legion of fans who, like you say, don't disturb this groove, you're in my system. They're kind of a basis of R&B, popular electronic music. And so now the thing is trying to keep people's attention or get their attention. You have to really be on the social media.
Exactly. Which is why I'm glad you guys were on social media, because I'm like, yo, I love this song. I have to interview these guys because people don't really appreciate, R&B, funk, and all that no more. It's like funk didn't even it's like it doesn't even exist anymore because it's like nobody's playing funk. Like Bruno Mars kind of took it there, with his
he took it
album.
there.
Yeah.
But you really don't get it fully like you used to. You had, Parliament, you had Bootsy,
Yep.
James Brown, all that. Now you
And
just
you had all these groups out of Ohio. Home of funk, really.
Dayton, Ohio.
Please.
Man, I'm originally from Lorain, Ohio, so I was around, the Leverts and the Rude Boys and the Men at Larges. I was around,
Right.
listening to those guys. So, I kind of had a hint of music in my system. I can't sing very well, but I'm a connoisseur, so I love great music, man. That's why I appreciate y'all for doing
I was born in Dayton.
You're from you were born in Dayton. Oh wow.
Yeah,
I was born in Dayton.
And see, like
that's why
Wikipedia
the
lies
funk
because
rubbed off.
Wikipedia said you was from Massachusetts.
I am from Massachusetts, but I was born in Dayton because my dad was in the Air Force at the Air Force base there.
Military baby. And Mike, you're from Raleigh, North Carolina.
Well,
I mean, Ohio players. I mean, what can you say about the Ohio players?
Ohio players.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Where you from, Mike?
Not to forget Zap, Roger Trout.
Oh, yeah.
Roger, yes.
So many.
There were so many funk bands from that era. But no, I'm born in Raleigh, North Carolina, but I grew up in Jamaica, Queens. So there were a lot of band and there were bands in every garage, in every basement. So that's kind of how I cut my teeth.
Oh man, I appreciate y'all. So I'm looking forward to the new album. Is there a date?
I think
we have a single out right now. You know about People Get Up?
Yes, I saw that on my Google Play. Yes.
Right. Oops, I'm gonna no. See, I'm still trying to find that guy, but I won't. Okay, go away. I'm gonna. Yeah, People Get Up, and it has, and Melly Mel is doing the rap on it, and Sandra St. Victor. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So we started with that. We started with that because we wanted to help out with the election.
Yeah, we were. We're the system, so we wanted to show them there was a different system.
Right.
Not the system everybody associates with doing bad things. We're the good system.
Right.
The system trying to keep me down, man.
Yeah.
No. We're trying to build you up.
Yep. You hear a million references about that, and I'm like, no, it's not true.
That's not right.
Oh man. So a lot of people follow me. I know you guys individually have your own, pages. Can you tell the people where to find you on social media and everything?
Okay,
sure. So you can get us on Facebook and on Instagram, The System Music. I'm The System Mick, and Dave is The System Dave. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, the System Music YouTube channel. And we have quite a few things coming up that we want to make people aware of. But please, subscribe, ask us questions. We love talking to our fans and our folks, our system folks.
Right. Our YouTube page is called The System Music Channel.
Gotcha.
System Music Channel.
You hear that?
And my Instagram is David Frank The System.
David Frank the System. All right, you hear that, people? They gave you your social medias. Make sure you go follow them, support. They have a
Yep.
new album coming out, and
Right.
hopefully a tour when all this stuff clears up.
Yep.
When COVID goes away, we'll hopefully get to see you
Absolutely.
guys on the road doing
That
your
would be
thing.
great.
So
Yeah,
I
we miss
really
it.
appreciate you, Dave. I appreciate you, Mike, for doing my Love to Laugh podcast. You know, we're gonna make this big, and then I have something planned. So my plans is to turn this podcast into a live session. So when I find a venue,
Fantastic.
I would love to bring you guys and have you perform your hits in front of an intimate crowd.
That would be
That would be
great. Man. I
great.
think you're
That would
going
be
to do
great.
it.
Love to do it.
I think you're going to do it, man.
Thank you,
All right.
thank you so much, man. And let me
It
close
was
this out.
great
And then,
talking to you, Marlon. Thank you.
All right, Marlon. Thanks.
thank you. I'm gonna close this out, and then I'm gonna tell y'all how I'm gonna
Okay.
distribute this. Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
y'all so much for
All right.
tuning in to the Love to Laugh podcast. I am Marlon Ballard. I've been joined by David Frank and Mike Murphy from The System. Make sure y'all check out their new album, and we will be right back with y'all. Thank y'all so much for the Love to Laugh podcast.